Hey everybody. I know this first unit, this Introduction to Computer Science and the assignments that goes with it, is a little different. It's a little different than some of the other assignments you'll do in the course. So I want to give a couple tips on how to do this first unit and especially how to hand it in and stuff like that since we're getting started here and some of the options that you can do with that. So let's take a look at the website and you'll get a feel for what I'm talking about. So I'm going to jump here to the content and then I'm going to jump to the assignments page or the assessments page and scroll down, and this is what I'm talking about. We're talking about the problem solving assignment and the visual problem solving assignment, but I'll also make a reference to the scratch assignment. So I'll give you some tips on those and how to hand them in, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to open this problem solving assignment. This assignment is designed to train your brain to learn how to problem solve, and it's got a lot of flexibility built into it. So it's got three parts to it, part 1, 2, 3. You can type this up in whatever program you'd like. So if you want to type it up in Word or Google Docs or even Windows Notepad, that's fine, or something similar to that. Or you can even do it by hand. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different options of different ways you can do this assignment. To me, it's about showing me that you've been analyzing how to solve problems. Your actual answers to a lot of these questions are there's no answer key for this problem. It's just about learning and showing me that you're solving problems and dissecting problems in a different way. So anyways, let's say I was going to go do this first part, classifying. I would say like, okay, in Microsoft Word, I'm going to go to section 1, part A, and I know you can do fancy numbering and stuff in Word. I'm not here to teach you Word. I'm just here to do this. So what would be writing an English essay? To me, that would be an optimum solution, because you'd want to write the most amount of the least amount of words and get the highest amount of marks. So that would be an optimum one. And then I would go on and do B, etc. Okay. Then I can go on and do question 2, 2A. Give an example of a well-defined solution. So maybe I'd write something like 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's a solution that has pretty well-defined thing. I'm not an English teacher, so your point form answers are fine. You're just analyzing sort of, and this is an exercise in thinking. And then you would go on and do the rest of them, right? In the analogy part, in part 2, so maybe you have a part 2, and you want to do that part. So in question 1 of part 2, what I'm looking for in each of these is, if you were in the same situation, would you or would you have not done the same thing? And why, right? So you could say, no, weather is not that predictable, right? So that would be a fine answer for number 1. You're in the same situation, you would have done the same thing, and this is why you would have done it that way. Again, just it's more of an exercise in thinking than anything else. All right, the hard one though is part 3. In part 3 of this, now you're going to be doing actual problem solving using the 5 steps of problem solving. So for this one, I think what I'd rather do is maybe do one of them for you so you can kind of get a feel for what I'm looking for in each of these. Okay, so I'm going to pick number 2 as one to do. So I'm going to do this one. When you do your assignment, you could actually skip number 2 since I'm doing it for you. I'd be fine with that. Or you could submit what I'm doing, or you could do it your own way. So in number 2, okay, so let's say I did number 1 and I went on to do number 2, okay. So for number 2 of this, I would go to step 1. Step 1 of problem solving, define the problem. If you feel like what's written here is good enough, which maybe for some of these you could, like maybe number 1, you'd say, you know what, I'd just say as written, that's fine. I don't think that's the case for number 2. I feel like defining this problem, you need to kind of figure out in question 2 what's important and what's not important. A lot of what I wrote there is probably not that important to you. It depends kind of how you want to answer this question. That's why step 1 is so important. Step 1 in defining the problem, you might actually want to do it a different way versus a different student who wants to do it a different way. And you might give yourself more or less work in that problem solving. So for me, I'm going to say it's a quizzer game apologies, sorry. Quizzer game, 2 teams, 2 people per team, right? So that's already defined in there. Okay, there are 4 people, 2 on each team. Every 5th question is answered correctly. I don't care. What do I care about that? But this I care about. 5, 7, 60 questions. 5, 7, 6, 0 questions altogether. Okay, that's the total number of questions. Oops. The categories, 6 categories. I could use that, but then that just makes it harder for me. You answer every second round. You answer, every question is worth 1 point. How many questions do you answer? Not how many points, but how many questions do you answer? So what if I put it this way? What if I say it alternates teams and alternates the people on each team answering? I can't spell alternates, you get the idea. Okay? How many questions does one person answer? You can't completely change the question and make it something completely new, but that's why step 1 is so important. You kind of want to narrow down exactly what you're answering here. So for example, in this first one, $10, that one's pretty clear. You don't really need to do too much with that one. In question 3, there may be a lot sort of going on there. One thing that's not covered in question 3 is how long does she wait before making a decision? So you should probably add that in. You could say 1 day, 1 week, 1 year. Each time you do that, you change the question up a little bit. It makes it harder or easier or more accurate to what you want to do. So that would be important for number 3. Number 4, it's pretty clear as is. Maybe there's something you want to clarify about that. And then the only thing I'd say about number 5 is this word right here. What do I mean by long? Do I mean how many minutes, how many hours, how many days? That's not clear. So maybe you should add that in. So when you do number 5, you could say as written in minutes or as written in days. That might be a better way to answer question 5. Okay, but let's get back to question 2. So that was my step 1. In step 2, I decide how I'm going to answer this question. What model am I going to use? This is not a math exercise. So for some of these problems, maybe your model is Google. Maybe you actually, select this, copy it, and go to Google and paste it in and see if that's your tool for getting the answer. Maybe. Okay? Maybe they don't all work that way. Maybe you use a math formula. Maybe you draw a diagram. That's entirely up to you how you solve these problems. That's the model you're going to use. So for this one, I'm going to use math and a diagram. Okay? In step 3, now you actually use that model. Like you show me your work, so to speak, so I can kind of see how you did it, right? So 5760 divided by 2 equals, this is not a math activity. You can use calculators and stuff like that to get your answers if you want. 2880. Okay? That would be for each team, would answer that many questions. However, 2880 divided by 2 equals 1440. Yes, I could have done that in my head. I just wanted to show you. Which would be per person, per team. And that's my answer, right? So step 4 is for each person, okay? Step 5, normally we don't write down step 5. Step 5 is how you check your work. How do I check it to see if I got it right? You could just tell me the way you would be checking it, right? You could ask a friend, right? You could do it again. You could do it a different way. Depends on the problem. There are different ways we check it. What I'm looking at in this assignment is not your answers. What I'm looking at is Did you break down how you're going to do this? It's not what answer you get, it's how you got through the problem. That's important for me. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for in the problem solving activity. So say you did it in a way like this, then you could save this Word file. Okay, now this speaks a little bit now to how I want work handed in. When you save your Word files, put your name in the name of the file that you are saving, okay? You can certainly add more information to that, right? Like problem solving. But the name, your name is really important that it gets put right in the name of the file that you're saving. So, okay, I save that. Now, this also speaks to your Scratch work you're going to do. So eventually you're going to do those Scratch problems. You're going to follow my instructions to get a solution to a Scratch problem like you see on the right now. So this is a finished Scratch project. Excuse me. So from Scratch, you're going to go up here to File, and you're going to save it to your computer. Now, unfortunately, not like Microsoft Word, it doesn't give you the option of naming it when you save it. When you do this, it just automatically saves it as whatever it's supposed to be called. I think it's something like Scratch Project, and it automatically puts it in your Downloads folder. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to open up your Downloads folder, and this is true on a Mac or a PC, and in there you're going to have to rename that file by right-clicking on it and renaming it. Again, putting your name in there, and then Scratch Project if you want. But the most important thing is the name of the files you hand in is your name. Otherwise, I don't know whose is whose when I get it. I get this beautiful Word document. It's got all these problem-solving answers in it, but I don't know whose it is. I get this beautiful Scratch Project. It's perfect. It works great. I don't know whose it is. So when you hand in a file to me, it should be named your name and then anything else you want to put on there. I'm not picky about the details after that, but make sure your full name is in there, your first name and your last name. You don't need your middle name, but you know, you can't just hand in something called John. I don't know which John it is. All right, so now I've got two things. I'm actually going to take a second to put this Scratch file, just put it out on my desktop. I don't have to. But now I have two things I'm going to hand in. My problem-solving activity, my Word file. We'll get to more handing in a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to show you another problem for this unit, the visual problem-solving activity. So with this one, what I'm looking for with this activity is very often in computer science, problem-solving takes on a visual aspect. And yes, there are formal things that go with this, like the flowcharts and the top-down charts that are covered in the presentation. And that's what this activity has you do, as you make 3 flowcharts, 1, 2, 3, and 2, is that right? No, sorry, 1 flowchart here and then 1 flowchart down here. So a total of 2 flowcharts. So there should be 5 charts. I can't do my math right now. 5 charts, 3 top-down charts, 2 flow charts. For this activity, if I was in your shoes as a student, I'd honestly do this one on paper, right? Like how to get a job, all that stuff as a top-down chart, and then how to do the flow charts. To me, I would just do these on a piece of paper, and then I'll give you some tips on how you could hand that in too. So I'm just going to move my camera over here for a second. Let's pretend I was doing this on paper right now, okay? I was going to go and do, for example, my top-down chart, how to get a job. So I'm like, okay, how to get a job. Hang on, let me get that lined up for you guys. It works well. Get a job. How do I solve that problem? Well, to get a job, sorry, let's get this lined up nice for you guys. It's a little bit, I'm not a cameraman. Okay, so how do I get a job? Well, I need to find a job, right? So that's one thing I need to do is find the job. And then I need to do my resume. and then I go for the job interview. There we go. That's 3 components of how to get a job. Now I'll break down how do I find a job. Well, I can use the internet. That's one way. And I can use maybe a friend or family to help me find a job. Okay. For my resume, I could do a rough copy, and then I could type it up. And for my interview, I could dress nice. And then I could make sure I shower. Good tip. You want to smell good for your interview. So this is a solution to the problem of how to get a job. It fulfills the requirements of 3 different levels, 1, 2, 3, and at least 10 different boxes. And you don't have to do it in exactly this format. It could be all kinds of different ways for these different ones. You can have fun with it. It can be silly. It can be funny as long as it makes sense. But that would be how I would do it, is to do something like that. Now let me just do a quick flow chart. Just to give you an example. For example, how to get a date. So with the flow chart, I could start. I'm not necessarily going to do the whole thing, but do I even want a date? So that's a decision symbol. And if the answer is yes, or the answer is no, the answer is no, I'm just going to go right to the end, right there. Date's over. If the answer is yes, then I would go on to more and more steps in that flow chart, right? So that's another way I could do the flow chart, sort of the very similar way I did the top-down chart. I just do them by hand. Then, what I would suggest is get your phone, take a picture of that, send me the picture, or take the picture and, save it to your computer. You could email me the pictures for this one because, again, it's coming in as pictures. But in general, that would be a way you could just do it if you want to do it by hand. If you get the pictures off your phone, what I would then do is then maybe put them into a Word file, or once you have the pictures on your computer, you can then hand them in the same way. So you now would have some Word files to hand in, some Scratch files to maybe hand in, maybe even some picture files to hand in. All of those things would have your name on them. That's the important part, right? So these files have your name on them so that I know they're yours. Let's now take a look at how you hand in all these different types of assignments that you'd have for my course. So I'm going to go back to content. Actually, sorry, I'm going to go back to assessments. So right at the top of the assessments page, you can see right here is a link to my hand-in page. That's how I want you to hand in your work. Now, I know Brightspace has other ways to do this, and for other InformNet courses, maybe you're going to do it different ways, but this is the way I prefer. It's simple, it's efficient, and it works really well. So if you click on hand-in page, it will launch a page. You will have to be logged into your Google account. And then, as you can see right here, the Mr. Walks hand-in. Okay, so it says you have to be logged into your Google account. You just add the files. So I'm going to click Add File. I could drag and drop it, but I'm just going to click Select File. Go to my desktop. There's this one. Click Open. There it is. I could do them one at a time, or I could add more. So I'm going to select my Scratch project. I don't care. You guys can hand these in one at a time or hand them in all together as a unit. There's a couple files for me to hand in. I hit upload, and they start coming in. What I see on my end is what happens on my end is then those files will, oops, sorry, I got one more thing to do. I then hit submit. My apologies, there was one more step I forgot. There we go. And it'll tell you, thank you for handing in your work. Mr. Walks will mark it as soon as possible and get back to you. What I see on my end is right there. You can see it happened live over this demo. I received the files from you over the internet. I have your name, It also tracks your Google name, but those two don't always match. Some of you kids have wacky Google login names like, Minecraft Master 75. So I don't know who that is. So that's why I insist you putting your name there, but it's sort of a double check there. Now I know exactly whose work this is and that it's all set up. Okay? So those are my tips for how to get started handing this work in. If it's still confusing to you, email me and I'll try to answer your questions best as possible. This is the first unit, so it's a little different than the rest, but each unit I'll try and help you guys out to get this all set up right.